We are back discussing Workforce 4.0. I am Joe Pardavila, joined, of course, by Gerry Savani. Gerry, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And, as people who watch the show, listen to the podcast know, Gerry's very much like the Carmen Sandiego of 2025. Where in the world is Gerry Savani? So where are you right now, Gerry?
Visiting the beautiful city of New York.
And now, is it business or pleasure? Because most of your travel is business related. Is Gerry going to go cut loose in New York?
No, this time just visiting some friends, nothing business related.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, let's get into business and AI and the Workforce 4.0. We've got Sagi Eliyahu. He's the co-founder and CEO of Tonkean. Sagi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Good to be here.
Well, let's start with a little plug. Before we get deep into this conversation, Sagi, Tonkean, give us the elevator pitch. When you're going out there to VCs or angels, what is the pitch for Tonkean?
That's a good question. It's always interesting. Well, Tonkean is an orchestration platform for large enterprises. We help with back office processes mainly. So think about finance, procurement, legal processes. Really streamlining them together, automating them, and this is where AI and other fun stuff comes in. But it's really to say business processes are about people. They're not about data, but all software today is focused on data. And so we help big enterprises to, streamline that and really focus the experience for the employees that are actually supposed to use those processes and follow those processes.
Excellent. It sounds like you got that pitch down to the science. Not your first rodeo, Sagi. So give some context for the company. When was it founded, and was AI always sort of part of the mainframe of the company?
Yeah. So funny enough, we just celebrated 10 years about a couple weeks ago, and so we've been around, and we, I think, right at the beginning, maybe like a year later or so, but we started to use the concept of orchestration, which back then no one understood what I want from them. Even today, I'm sure some listeners are like, I'm not sure I understand what he's talking about. But even the word, the name Tonkean is a type of a primate, it's a type of a monkey. And so the entire idea was to begin with, I want to have software take the monkey business, the monkey task out of your work, and something that is smarter than a bot, but not as smart as humans. So in many ways, we've been building the idea of what agents and AI should do for you without always having enough technology to do that. And so the last few years have been amazing for our vision and our mission to kind of like truly come to life. So in many ways, yes, but in some ways, we're now enjoying the latest waves.
That's amazing. And so, Gerry, you work with companies like Tonkean all the time. How amazing is it to hear about a company like this that's been doing it for a decade? Because most of the companies we're hearing about now are these AI, flash in the pans. Everyone who throws AI in their title or sort of like PowerPoint presentations is going after money. But you got a guy like Sagi, been doing it for 10 years. How amazing is to see companies like this withstand the test of time and then take advantage of the fruits of their labor?
I think much of what's missing today from the market is really this deeper understanding of the enterprise space, because you see this entire Gen AI buzz and everything is doing now AI, but when you look a little bit deeper into what they are doing, they are very simplistic and very superficial cases that in a business environment where you have complex processes going on, plus integration with all kinds of legacy systems and data, this is not working quite well for the moment being, at least. And I think companies like Tonkean can bring a lot of experience and value to this entire AI revolution and make it really down to earth.
Yeah, and Sagi, talk about that in terms of when you started the company. Obviously, as we know, and someone who's watching this knows, that AI has been around a lot longer than 2023 and ChatGPT. I always love to ask people that have been in this space and doing it for a while, I'm sure those early conversations about AI in the company were sort of very nebulous. They were like very futuristic. And then you fast forward, I guess, 7 years into the company and it becomes mainstream. Tell us about how it almost like the switch was flipped in terms of people like you probably having to really dig in and sort of describe what AI is doing. And now you're like, AI, like, oh yeah, I get it, Sagi.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's actually connects directly to Gary's point. The enterprise environment is very complex, and it's a graveyard of technology waves that we're trying to improve. And yet we, if you ever been in a large enterprise environment, and I'm talking about like the biggest pharmaceutical companies, the biggest entertainment companies, the biggest financial services company, like those are the type of customers we work with, right? They're so used to waves of things that promising them this would be better, spending millions of dollars, implementing technology, and then guess what? You still pick up the phone or send an email to get anything done, and that's super frustrating. So, in many ways, the LLM wave with ChatGPT, the most that it did was actually help shrink the imagination gap, is what I call it. Where all of a sudden everything we've already been doing, all of a sudden customers were like a lot more open to try and like, deploy, even though before we even brought LLM to our solution. I mean, just the idea that, okay, I believe in technology, almost like I believe in software again, was a massive boost. But there's also a lot of, real time to value that those models changed to the like previous generation, if you will, of models, where we've used AI, to your point, way before ChatGPT, but the result was less good. But even if we got to a good result, it was like a lot more work to get to that point, versus now you can get from imagination to reality much faster. Again, to Gary's point, assuming you have the infrastructure to connect to the complexities of the enterprise, but that's what we do anyway. So like, it's sort of like, took it from a place where you're doing all this work, and you're getting a good result, to now you add that like magic dust, if you will.
Yeah.
But it's more than just cool. It's more than just easier to consume and understand, but now the quality also, doubled or tripled. So it's a real shift. And I think the most exciting thing is just the amount of opportunity that is opening, thanks to that sort of like overtone window of like, okay, now I can talk about technology doing big things for me. It was like almost like taboo at one point after the cloud and migration, digital transformation, all that stuff, that didn't really pay dividend for most people as they feel.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of truth here. I mean, with the entire time needed for ideation has been shortened. Like, you are able to put together a prototype in like a fraction of the time that you used to, and this kind of stimulates the imagination of everybody, really. I've had a very interesting experience with a bank in South Africa, where everybody was coming together and said, oh, but what if, what that, how about this, how about, let's try this. It was amazing how ideas started flowing. And this is because, yes, we have an opportunity here. And I think it's up to us to make this opportunity become reality in the reality of an enterprise, with all the complexity and all the stability that these enterprises need.
Let's dig in a little bit. Let's get into a little bit more of the nerdy stuff here, Sagi. And that's how does Tonkean agentic AI fundamentally differ from traditional automation tools in addressing the tech bloat? Because that's another thing that, you kind of referred to it too, like all this technology, and it just becomes more work for everybody. So what kind of unique advantages do you guys offer?
One way to look at it is to talk about like what is the difference between a chatbot and an agent, right? But I think even before that, I think it is important to double click on what is the difference between integration or automation with the concept of orchestration. And so if you kind of look at it from both of those angles, the orchestration idea is literally to focus about the process and the experience of the process end to end, and sort of like abstract the like where's the data lives and what are the teams doing, and really focus on the process itself. So I'll give you like a practical example. Every company has contracts, right? Legal is using contract, finance is using contract, sales using contract. At the end of the day, you want to manage those contracts, you probably buy some contract management system. Everything has a management system after it, right? That you basically manage those pieces of data. The reality of it, though, it's a sad reality, but that's the reality. You went in to deploy all of this thing and change the process around it and all that stuff, but your sales guy, he don't care about your contract system. The marketing person doesn't know where to go. The finance person actually now has another thing to go, and the only people that like it is the legal team, right? And that is true for contract. And I can tell you exact same story about sales systems and marketing systems and finance systems and HR systems. So the reality of it is everyone likes their own tools. They're happy with it. And those are actually good technology. So I'm not, dunking on anything like that. Those are bringing a lot of value for those teams. But what about everything else? So, orchestration is really the idea of, it's not about integrating those different systems. It's about understanding that what is the process, what is the priority of, again, that marketing person, and where does that contract, the interaction with contracts matters to them. And the reason this is a preempt to your question about agents and AI is because, to me, the biggest value or excitement that people has around agents compared to like the first half wave of it, which ChatGPT and chat interfaces and LLMs or generative AI, like it started like, oh, generative AI, look, it's like generate stuff for me. And then like people are excited about agents today, is the idea that you take that power of an LLM and you can treat it as like a sort of an employee or a team member or something you can assign work to, or it can go do work for you that is less transactional, like message, send message, get message, send message, get message, but more like, go do some work for me, come back, here's the assignment, here's the goal, and here's what I'm expecting to get back. And it will go and do that for you, and it will be able to use different tools and different data points to kind of do that work. So when you combine the two ideas, this is where agentic orchestration, where this is kind of like that layer becomes crucial. Because if you have an orchestration layer that can connect to all the different systems, that can understand different people priorities, and then you bring agents to it, you essentially now coordinate the people, the systems, and the agents to kind of work together as a team to solve a problem. That same contract example is now you able to say something like, okay, if sales just want to use, I don't know, email or Slack, whatever they're using, Microsoft Teams, to ask for a review of a contract, maybe what I can do now is I can, something like Tonkean can, monitor that email address or Slack, let them do what they like to do, like don't force change on them, have AI agent analyze this first, give like pointers of like, there's some red flags here with this contract. I don't even want to waste the time of the legal team. They're going to push back on it. You might as well go back to your, to the other party. Or if it's okay, or if you need the legal team help, let's put it down the process of legal, go all the way down to their system. Didn't have to change their behavior. They didn't have to change their behavior, and it's all like coordinated in a much more streamlined way, if you will. So there's a layer of things that needs to happen to actually extract value from this technology, but this is kind of like the key of it is the agents are able to do things more autonomously. But then if you have something like an orchestration platform, you can then hook them in, if you will, into the existing processes. That's why we call it agentic orchestration, because it's really, orchestrating the both the agents, but also in a way that has more agency, if you will. So a lot of word plays here, but I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. And Gerry, obviously you're very bullish on AI agents. So what do you think there about Sagi?
Yeah, it's a very interesting use case. Kind of like acting like the in between two systems, two processes. And I think the agents are able now to do a decent job in this area. Um, I would be curious to understand your agents are based on what kind of models? Are you using something off the shelf or you did it yourself?
Yeah, so we found that the models from the big labs and the open source are just growing very fast. And so even if you're trying to fine tune something, like the value of it is not going to be very high compared to, the fact that, being, to your point, Joe, a little bit more technical, like comparing to like the context window, they just continue to grow and grow and grow. Not to mention that large enterprises, a lot of times they have very strict limitation of which vendor they want to work with, or maybe they have their own sort of like, some of our customers are one of those large, labs themselves, so they obviously want to use their own stuff. But really, where we bring the most value is not with the model itself, is how you enable those agents to work with the enterprise systems and the processes around it. Last nerdy point, like anyone that knows what MCP is, we sort of like, you can also look at us as almost like the MCP for the enterprise itself internally. So the tooling and the capabilities are things the legal team or the finance team or the sales team can define as almost like a with no code type of thing, right? It can define the process, but then that process become a tool that is available to the agents to use when needed. So instead of instructing the agent, you have to do X, Y, and Z, you tell it, okay, you have the ability to create an NDA, you have the ability to, search our policies, you have the ability to, search the web or like validate an address in the government services to, make sure the company you're working with is legit, right? Like, and on and on and on and on, right? Like this is like, so that really becomes the enabler for that technology. And less about the model. It's actually very fun that we are able to then, introduce the new models as soon as they come out, and we partner with those labs, so we a lot of times get like early access to. So, as the second it is launched, is now available for you to use. But enterprises are slow, so it takes them a few weeks anyway.
Out of curiosity, just for folks who are curious, where does your platform embed within a company? Like we all know like how Slack, we all have the Slack app on our desktop or laptops, or, we know where the Teams app is. Is Tonkean very similar to that, where there's like an app that lives among these company computers?
Yeah, so you could, so like I said, like Tonkean is about the process itself. So you could, and a lot of use cases, mostly around procurement, for example, when you're trying to purchase something within the company, they would use the Tonkean UI too. So there might be like a landing page you go to, and you have like something that looks like Google, where you kind of like say, hey, I need to buy like this or that, or I have an event next week and I need to to expense it, or how do I purchase this, and so on. But in some other cases, like the contract example, no UI is better than AUI in our build, so like if the user, like the marketing person or the HR person or whatnot, is used to send Slack messages to a Slack channel to ask legal or ask procurement or ask finance, we want to connect to that behavior and let them stay in that behavior. So now you'll see Tonkean like all of a sudden replying in Slack. But same goes with email, right? The joke is that lawyers, doesn't matter, the technology will go around them and they'll stay in Outlook, right? And we're like, okay, that's fine. That's just a conduit. So, you can send an email in Outlook, and now you get the reply, and you kind of work with it. Thanks to the LLM in super natural way, but behind the scene, it will do all the work for you. So it's really about optimizing and personalizing the experience to the different stakeholders. So the adoption is actually high and not theoretical.
Yeah, that's great. No, it's a great, thank you for explaining that, because I think, we started talking about tech bloat and I'm like, oh my God. So now all of a sudden we've got the Tonkean app that's sitting there that I gotta log into, but then I have to have like a different password for it and stuff like that. So I do love how the ease of use you have it for people. Gerry, that's in terms of in the way the amount of crap we have to deal with, that's a brilliant way of handling it, right?
Yeah, I mean, bring it to the user in a way that doesn't make them change their habits. Like you let them do the same things they usually do. Is just giving them more help really through the interfaces that they are using on a daily basis. So I think this is a really good way of doing this, because you're not introducing complexity to your process and your business.
Yeah, and it's what's interesting about it is that there's the communication side of it, right? The Slack and email example, but there's also the sort of like work queue example, right? If you think about some of those examples I gave, trying to purchase something, many times you have approvals that needs to happen through finance, but also, maybe IT needs to do like a security assessment. They have their own queue, they're using some ticketing system to manage their work. So Tonkean is that's kind of the point is, we would automatically create a ticket for them with all the information. So it's just part of their natural flow. And then they approve it, and it will kind of like go back to the to the process and continue. But again, this is where AI is cool, is that those agents are not a chatbot that you have to go to. If you hook it to that same ticket, then that IT person can just reply as a comment to that ticket in their system. I don't know, the Jira, for example, whatnot, and then Tonkean will reply to that comment as well and give them more information about this and whatnot. So it's literally like, creating the obfuscation or abstraction between all the different people, so everyone can stay focused on the things they care about, still contribute to the greater goal of the process, but without feeling like, man, I'm like keep being pulled out to do all this stuff that I don't like to do, and I'm wasting so much energy. And AI just makes it more natural. But we've been doing it, like you said, for a decade. But AI just made it like even smoother and like feel more like you truly have like a PMO or like a assistant for everyone to kind of do the ugly stuff.
That's great. No, it's awesome. And it's funny too, because we're all obsessed with the 2-letter word AI, but I think more than not, we're obsessed with the 3-letter word ROI. So if you don't mind, if possible, could you share how some of, maybe a case study of someone you've worked with about the return on investment on working with Tonkean and how it's helped a company? Obviously, you don't have to name names, but if you could just name a sector or something like that, just to give us an idea of like what kind of I think we all, the three of us, can agree this sounds pretty awesome and people should use this, but we also love to see the receipts, as Whitney Houston once said. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, people can go to the website and see the names themselves, but for the sake of the podcast, one of the biggest tech companies in the world, and one of the biggest credit card companies in the world, if you will, has a similar example where they use Tonkean to streamline and orchestrate that example of the purchasing process, where everyone in the company can, go to Tonkean or use their existing, again, communications, but eventually go to Tonkean to say, I need purchase something, maybe purchase software, maybe, your MacBook stopped working, you need a new one, maybe you need to, have like a contractor or something. And big enterprises behind the scene as a mess. It's like multiple ERPs, you have a few customers with like 20 CLMs. It's like the contract lifecycle manager. Just like, what? How did you even get there? But with Tonkean, and that's kind of like in our case studies, they were able to bring down the average time it takes to go through that process of filling a request from, on average, 45, 50 minutes to 5 minutes. So that's per person that is trying to handle it. But the handling of the entire request, so essentially, since you ask for it until it got approved and your vendor got paid, went down from an average of 17 days to 5 days. So when you really think about what it means, you have a lot more leverage to save money. Because if I'm your vendor and you tell me, hey, give me 10% discount, I'll get it to you in 5 days. Like, we'll sign in 5 days. I'm like, take it. Take the 10% discount, because the time matters a lot. But really, from like, why do you even purchase stuff? You're doing it. You need a contractor. You need something done. You know what I mean? And so if it takes you 3x more to get that person, and this is on average, don't forget, right? Like, some things can take months, and those will get cut significantly too. So it really changes the outcome for the company. But it's also, from the procurement side of things in this example, it changes the relationship that procurement has with the rest of the organization. It's less about, oh, God, I have to go through procurement, and more about, oh, okay, maybe they can help me get the better terms or the better price, which is really what they're, skilled at. And so there's both ROI for the company, but there's also ROI for that team that was trying to improve that process for a long time, but didn't get the adoption. Now the adoption is much higher, which the last thing I wanted to say, that one of our case studies talks about, it's actually legal, but talks about, the quote is near 100% adoption of the process. Wow. So what it means is that, let's say for legal, all the contracts end up in their repository. With before, it was like, no matter what they try to do, they just didn't get there, and now you kind of wrap around it, and wherever it's coming from, eventually it flows into the contract. And when they do an audit, they're like, well, all the contracts are here, so it's like, kind of near 100% adoption. So those are a few examples.
Really, really good examples of ROI. And I've seen many cases like that where bringing in some agentic AI has helped reducing significantly the time in doing various tasks like this. We have one famous example in OSF where agents are used to help on code reviews, and the solution architect's time has been drastically reduced on staying on this task, which they don't like it very much. So the less time they spend on this, the better it is, and it's been the orders of magnitude in terms of the time savings, and you can then reinvest the time in doing something more interesting, because there is a long queue of work out there. Like, this is speaking to that AI will replace people. Like, just thinking of how much work there is to do, it's gonna take a while.
Yeah, it's true. And I think one thing that becomes pretty evident, and especially in the enterprise, there's a lot of tasks that just takes a long time to complete the task, or generate the content, or create the asset. Like the example I gave with like purchase request, like just filling the request, like kind of creating that request. But it's very easy and fast to review that, right? So like the creation takes a long time, but reviewing it is very easy for a human. And this is why, like, a lot of times entry-level jobs are like, go do this thing and then come back to me, and I'll look at it and be like, oh, that's wrong. Like, change this thing and come back to me. And that's kind of what you want to offload. And AI really, especially with agentic, is allow you to essentially bring that into the process in a way that everyone are starting to play more of a role like that. So instead of doing all that legwork of building that asset, let me review it. And that's what I think AI currently, LLM, when I say AI, right, like are really good at. You think about image generation, it's very hard to, takes a long time to design, I don't know, like a cartoon monkey thing. But it's very easy to look at the result and be like, that's ugly, or like, that's great, or like, change the color. So, take that and now like kind of like use that example across the day-to-day work. There's a lot of it. And so really that's where a lot of the untapped ROI still is to be tapped, which is all those different things that we spend between a full day to an hour to sometimes even 30 minutes that now can go down to 30 seconds. And all you need to do is review it. And you can do a lot more of it. and you can do a better job of it. But that's what you want. That's what enterprises want to do. They don't just want AI running wild and creating things. They want the people to still review it. Just like you wouldn't hire 100 entry-level people and just tell them go wild. You'd have to have a process and some org chart, and that's what we found. And that's what we found in reality. But that's also what I believe not going to change anytime soon or ever. You will always want an org chart. You will always want a process. Even as AI gets to like a point where it's really, really good, it doesn't matter. You still need it.
And it's funny too, Sagi, is that there almost seems, without being too dramatic, it's almost like there's a war on coders. I mean, famously, Zuckerberg said a few years ago, the great thing about AI is, the AI will do all the coding. And in a Tonkean, you kind of have a no-code approach to doing things. So tell me about this, how this world is going to work without these coders. Like you said, they'll probably end up doing something else. But let's dig into that a little bit.
I don't think they'll do something else, actually. So this is actually a great point. So no code is an interesting concept because it is, in retrospect now, in hindsight, it was a transitionary concept. In many ways, so the traditional concept of no code, for those who doesn't know what I'm talking about, is that instead of like writing code, you can drag and drop, things in a more kind of visual way and create like a sequence that is similar to coding, but it's not actually coding. You don't need to learn the language. It's like more just the logical aspect of it. And there's varied degree of it. There's like low code, which is you still need to code a little bit, and there's like full no code. It doesn't matter though on the scale. It is meant to allow, again, quote unquote, no coders to build stuff. And so in many ways, one of our kind of early missions as the company was something I called expanding the pie of who can leverage software, right? Because like true coders, people that are, expert in writing software, is less than 1% of the world, and I think a lot less than that, honestly. But that's a very small amount compared to how impactful software is on everything. And so the idea of expanding that pie of more people can leverage software, customized software to do stuff for us, that's a good thing. I still believe that to be a very fundamental leverage for good in society and progress. So, but what LLM does, and by the way, the reason it's good at coding is just like I said with the image generation, it's hard to write code, but for a good coder, it's very easy to review code. So you can have it write the code and then you review it and be like, that's wrong, that's great, type of thing. So similarly, you would still need someone to review it. So I don't think coders are actually going to go away. I think Zuckerberg talks about it. He talks about the amount of line of codes that are written by a person versus are written by AI. Well, when I started coding, I learned to code in assembler and in C and C++. Most people right now they're coding in 3 or 4 levels above that stack. That a lot of stuff that they didn't have to write is actually already being written for them with open source and whatnot, and they're just using existing libraries. That is just another layer of abstraction about that. If you're a bad coder, AI will create a bad code for you. If you're a good coder, AI will create good code for you. And not because AI is better or worse, is because you need to be the one kind of adjusting it. And again, image is such a visual, simple way to do it. Anyone can go right now, go to like Grok or JetGPT or whatnot and say, create an image for something. And then, it will do a good job. But what is all those like, trending, what was the Ghibli thing right? Like someone had to come up with it and be like, oh, what we cool, and then everyone are copying it and now everything looks great, right? But the designers or the one with like a design taste would do a better job at producing, good looking videos and images than someone that is not. it's just going to lower the bar more and more and more and more and more as we progress. And that's a good thing for me, like very good thing.
Awesome. Gerry, we're getting coding flashbacks there when Sagi was getting into all that.
Yeah, like I've heard this before, how coders will disappear because of the next great thing that is coming out. In reality, the job of a coder has evolved, and it's gonna evolve also with the AI, and because you have to understand all the implications behind the code and the why and how it integrates. So even if you don't write the code, even just asking the AI to do something useful for you, it's not trivial. Like you think it's for everybody, and not really for everybody. It kind of enlarges a little bit the pool of who will be able to touch technology, but you will need some kind of a technical background in order to do that job well, because to do it like whatever, probably anybody can do it, but to do it well, it will require some technical background, so understanding of why are you doing these things, to what processes do you want to connect, to what data do you want to connect, and what are the challenges with that, and so on and so forth. And from time to time, you're going to bump into something where you actually will need to solve with coding, because there is no other alternative. Banks are still using IBM AS400 systems. So yeah, that's an interesting fact.
Yeah. Someone asked me recently, can we integrate with the mainframe? And I was like,
Wow,
this,
sounds like an 80s spy movie. We still got we got.
I had the joke. It's like, there's all this AI stuff, but the world runs on Oracle. You know what I mean? It's like, it's still, that's still the, Oracle as an example, right? Obviously the Oracle, the IBMs, the SAPs. No, but I think just to double click on that point of doing it well, right? Like I really think that's the key point here, Joe, because there's no one way to code. There's no one way to write. There's no one way to design. So the moment there's more than one way to do it, you don't have consistency in like knowing what the quality is. So you need, as a person, need to decide what is doing it well. And that comes with experience, and that comes with knowledge, and that comes with a skill set. And so if people are like, should I even go learn coding? Like 100%, it is like a mental tool of how to think about problems. This is not, the coding language itself is irrelevant. That will change with or without AI. There's always going to be the next thing. And so it's really comes down to that.
Wow. And speaking of the subject of good and bad, I'm curious, because I'm sure a lot of the companies you've worked with, Sagi, have adopted some forms of AI in one shape or form. What are some of the stakes you're seeing people when it comes to their AI usage? I mean, obviously you're using it well, but some companies may be like, because you did see this over the last couple of years where everyone all of a sudden started putting like AI in the title of their company, and we're like, wait a minute, you're not an AI company. Well, what are some of the missteps you're seeing that people are using when it comes to AI?
There is a lot of overpromise in the market, like with any new technology. I like to use the analogy of the mobile, kind of like wave. You guys, obviously, we've all lived through it, and at one point, everything was a mobile app. Like literally, anything you could do with any vendor had the mobile app, and it took a couple of years or more to realize that some things really should not be a mobile app. Like, I don't want to do it in mobile. It has zero value to me, and the experience is actually way worse. If you use something that is location based, if you use something that is like quick and and like there's like certain characteristics that are making a mobile experience far superior to a desktop, but the other side also true. And so I think that's kind of what we're gonna see flash out a little bit in the system. But we're right now in the everything mobile app, like everything is a mobile, everything is an AI thing, and that quickly becomes evident. I think the most kind of visual example is like reporting and dashboarding. there's so many like examples out there of like, you go to a chatbot and you ask like, what is the earnings for like this and this, and you're like, well, that's, useful if you kind of like randomly trying to ask. But if you are actually want to like browse and like explore this thing, you need visual, like we can absorb a lot more information as humans than what that chat back and forth does to you, So it's like the shopping experience in Amazon. I was like, hey, why is Amazon Alexa not like letting me buy? I don't want to talk to Alexa and like explain what I like, show me 20 options. I want to scroll through them, and see the reviews and like choose the one I want to double click into. So like, that would be probably where there's also a little bit hesitant in the market for bigger enterprises. They really want to go back to that ROI case. They really want to see like, is that actually going to be better? Because the cost of change is still real. People has a trust issue with it too, as they should, with hallucination and so on. So you really need to nail that balance between this is like significantly better experience than it was otherwise.
Did you see any use case that you said, hey, I like this. This is interesting. This I didn't expect this. Did you see something like this in your day-to-day working with customers?
I think one thing we doubled down on recently that came from a customer actually that we didn't think about ourselves, and we realized, that's actually really smart, is that everyone talks about, even in the example I gave you with ROI, the easiest way to think about things is efficiency when it comes to technology and automation, and now AI. We're like, ooh, that's going to be so much faster. But one of the use cases that we've now again see across our customers, but a few months ago came from one of our customers, is the idea of actually guiding a junior employee to do quality work, like a quality assurance, if you will, use case for AI. So instead of AI generating the content and the person reviewing it, is the person doing work, and then AI as a way of mentoring, if you will, the junior employee, so the senior employee would not have to waste their time as much. And then the senior employee is still reviewing the end result, but like along the way you have AI that is trained on or have the context window with the guidelines and the best practices, and then can really kind of like help shepherd along. I think that's a very, like, I think it's more common in consumer with like learnings and like education, but I think also has a real applications within enterprises as a quality control AI.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Good use case.
That's great. Awesome. Well, Sagi, if folks want to find out more information about you and your team and, what you're doing these days, where should they start?
Yeah, tonkean.com, for the company. Always a good place to kind of dig deeper, see the stories, see the use cases, see the videos. So it's a lot of words, but when you actually see it visually, it just makes total sense. And then, LinkedIn and X is kind of where I hang. So, please come and say hi.
Awesome. It's Sagi Eliyahu, co-founder and CEO of Tonkean. Sagi, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was fun.